Do you know someone who never really grew up? Maybe he was your childhood best friend, always dreaming bigger than the rest. Maybe it's your boyfriend, charming, spontaneous, full of plans that never materialize. Or maybe it's your own father, a man who never stopped living like a boy. You watched him talk about future empires with fire in his eyes, but 20 years later, nothing ever came of it. He blames timing. He blames others. He blames the world for not seeing his potential. But beneath that dreamer's glow, there's a restlessness, a pattern, a refusal. Carl Jung called it the puer aeternus, the eternal boy. A man who lives in the realm of potential, but fears the weight of becoming real. He's not living. He's rehearsing. And if you've ever loved someone like that, you know, it's both beautiful and heartbreaking to witness. You've met him. Maybe you loved him. Maybe you still do. He's the one who lights up a room with stories of what could be bold visions, untamed ambition, wild creativity. There's a spark in his eye that makes you believe he's destined for something great. He speaks of the future with such conviction that you find yourself pulled into his orbit, hoping you'll get to witness the moment it all comes true. But then the months pass, the years, nothing comes to life. Each failure is wrapped in poetic explanation. The timing wasn't right. I wasn't supported. People didn't understand my genius. And somehow his charm makes even these excuses feel convincing. He is always on the verge, always almost. Maybe this man is your brother. Maybe he's your boyfriend. Maybe he's your father, the man you looked up to, but quietly outgrew. A man whose body aged, but whose soul remains suspended in adolescence. He shuns anything that smells of structure, responsibility, or permanence. Commitment terrifies him. Deadlines drain him. Routine feels like death. Yet he is not lazy. He is not broken. He is simply stuck. There's something in him that refuses to land, like a bird that keeps circling the sky, afraid that if it lands, it will lose its freedom. But this freedom comes at a high cost. He avoids discomfort like it's a poison, not realizing that in doing so, he's also avoiding growth, depth, and intimacy. And the people around him, those who believe in him, who try to help him, are left in a painful paradox. Do you keep hoping? Or do you let go? Carl Jung named this inner force the puer aeternus, the eternal boy. A man who is forever becoming, but never becomes. And that is where this story begins, not with condemnation, but with understanding. Because to truly confront this archetype, we must first understand the tragedy and the tenderness of the man who never came home to himself. At first glance, he's magnetic. There's something almost intoxicating about his energy, youthful, spontaneous, unburdened by the heaviness that weighs most people down. He doesn't follow rules. He questions everything. He dances to the rhythm of his own imagination. And to those watching from the outside, he looks free, alive, untouched by the ordinary. But look closer and you'll see the cracks behind the charm. The same man who dreams out loud and paints life with poetic words struggles with the simplest realities. He cannot keep promises. He avoids hard conversations. He retreats from anything that demands consistency, discipline, or discomfort. What feels like spontaneity is often impulsiveness. What looks like inspiration is often an excuse for chaos. He idealizes a perfect life, the perfect woman, the perfect calling, the perfect timing, and when reality inevitably fails to match his fantasies, he disconnects. He walks away sometimes, physically, sometimes emotionally. He doesn't fight for things. He escapes them. Again and again. He is not cruel, just absent. Present in spirit, but never in structure. And for the people who love him, this absence is agonizing. They try to understand. They give space. They offer help. But over time, they begin to feel like they're the ones doing all the growing. They carry the weight of decisions. He avoids the stability. He resists the maturity he fears. And perhaps most painful of all, he makes them feel like they are the problem for asking too much, for wanting something real, for not accepting his world of endless some days. What they don't see, what even he doesn't see, is that underneath his yearning for freedom lies a deep fear of failure, of adulthood, of being ordinary, of committing and discovering he is not enough. So he never steps forward. He floats instead. This is not rebellion, it's paralysis. And while he may not see it, his refusal to grow is not just hurting himself, it's draining everyone around him. Not loudly, quietly, slowly, until the charm begins to feel like a lie and the dreamer begins to look like a ghost. He calls it freedom, the ability to walk away to keep his options open to avoid anything that feels like a cage. He says he doesn't want to be tied down by a job, a relationship, a mortgage, a routine. He wraps his avoidance in noble language. He's waiting for the right moment, searching for something real, not willing to settle. But this freedom, it's a performance, a carefully crafted illusion. Because if you look beneath the poetry, you'll find fear. A deep primal fear of anchoring into anything that might require accountability. Fear of waking up one day and realizing he's ordinary, that he failed, that he's not who he claimed to be. So instead, he stays in motion, never stopping long enough to face the truth in stillness. He becomes a fugitive, not from the world, but from himself. Every responsibility postponed is a weight he shifts onto someone else. Every commitment avoided is a mirror he refuses to look into. He says relationships are prisons, but what he fears is being truly seen naked, imperfect, accountable. He says he's too wild for rules, but what he cannot tolerate are limits, boundaries that might expose his emotional fragility. The truth is harsh. He's not free. He's trapped in a self-constructed cage of dreams without action, of ideals without embodiment, of visions without roots. He floats like a balloon in the wind, untethered but directionless. And the longer he drifts, the heavier the world becomes, because time doesn't wait, and life eventually demands that we show up. Choose, build, bleed. Carl Jung called this state suspension the soul hovering between heaven and earth, refusing to descend into the soil of reality. But without roots, nothing can grow. Without grounding, no life can flourish. A true freedom isn't the absence of limits. It's the courage to choose what's worth committing to. But he doesn't choose. He escapes. And in that escape, he slowly loses everything real, including himself. Needed to understand the eternal boy, we must look beyond his behavior and into the myth that breathes beneath his skin. Carl Jung saw the puer aeternus not just as a personality flaw, but as a deep archetypal pattern that runs through mythology, culture, and the collective psyche. This is not a new phenomenon. It has existed in every civilization, cloaked in different names, wearing different faces. In mythology, the puer often appears as the divine child, the golden boy, the son of the gods. He is radiant, full of promise, untouched by the decay of the ordinary world. He lives in the realm of potential, destined for greatness, but never quite arriving. He is adored, protected, and above all, unburdened. And in modern life, he still walks among us. He is the man who clings to a psychic paradise, a place where everything is soft, safe, and taken care of. A mental space that resembles childhood, where mistakes have no consequence and love requires no effort. In this inner world, he remains the center of everything. But while this may feel like freedom, it is actually a refusal to leave the womb of comfort. This refusal is not conscious, it's instinctive, and it's dangerous. Because life does not take place in potential, it takes place in the real. In the failed attempts, the awkward silences, the slow building of something meaningful. But the puer resists this at all costs. He lives suspended between what could be and what is forever preparing, forever rehearsing, never stepping fully into the stage of his own life. He is not lazy. He is enchanted by a dream that tomorrow will be different, that one day it will all make sense. But the years pass. The people around him move forward, and he remains locked in a timeless loop, never touching ground. That is the tragedy of the eternal boy, not that he can't grow up, but that he refuses to. He always says, not yet, not today, not this season, not until he's ready, not until the stars align, not until the perfect idea, the right woman, the exact phase of life shows up at his doorstep. This is one of the most seductive lies the puer aeternus tells himself, that he has time, that life is patient, that he can afford to wait. But life isn't a rehearsal, and time isn't a silent servant. While he waits, something subtle and irreversible is happening. Time is slipping away moment by moment, quietly and without permission. Years pass, not in grand gestures, but in small avoidances. The call never made the opportunity, never seized the relationship, never deepened. And he remains locked in the someday, imagining a future where everything finally begins, without realizing it's already ending. This isn't optimism, it's denial. He believes that by avoiding choices, he is keeping his freedom intact. But the opposite is true. Every unmade decision is a decision in itself, a decision to delay living, to trade purpose for potential action for fantasy. And with every delay, the road narrows. Options shrink. The once vast future becomes a corridor with fewer and fewer doors. Carl Jung observed this pattern and called it a disconnection from time, a refusal to live in the now. The poor lives in a suspended state of not yet, always one step away from beginning, but never arriving. He doesn't build, he drifts. And the tragedy is he doesn't even realize the cost until one day he wakes up and realizes he's been waiting for a life that never began. He mistakes stalling for preparing, but he's not getting ready, he's hiding. And what he's hiding from is not failure. It's the responsibility of being real. Because once you start, once you truly commit, the fantasy dies. And what's left is life. In the beginning, he's dazzling. There's a lightness in him that feels like freedom, spontaneous conversations, unpredictable plans, bursts of inspiration that make you feel like you're part of something extraordinary. He talks about ideas that seem revolutionary, relationships that feel like soul-level connections, and a life that always promises to be more than what's ordinary. But then the shine begins to fade. Not all at once, slowly, quietly, like a star dimming over time, not because it lost its fire, but because it never had the fuel to sustain its brilliance. What was once spontaneity becomes instability. What felt like depth begins to show up as emotional inconsistency. He starts to forget commitments, not just dates and plans, but emotional ones too. One day he's fully present, passionate, poetic. The next he disappears without explanation. And when asked why, his answers are wrapped in gentle deflection, "I just needed space. I wasn't ready. You expect too much." The excuses are soft, almost loving, but behind them lies a deep disorientation. He is overwhelmed by the very structure he once promised to build. As soon as the world around him asks for something real, stability, reliability, follow-through, he retreats. Not because he doesn't care, but because he's afraid he won't measure up. And so the collapse begins. But it's not dramatic. It's not loud. It's disguised. It shows up in missed deadlines, forgotten calls, emotional distance, constant restarts, a job left mid-project, a relationship left mid-promise, a dream left mid-sentence. And yet, to the outside world, he still seems full of potential, still full of charm. But those closest to him begin to see the truth he's unraveling, not because he lacks vision, but because he refuses to root it in reality. And the more he hides behind the mask of potential, the more painfully clear it becomes he's not soaring. He's drifting. The most haunting part of the puer aeternus isn't his charm or even his avoidance. It's his shadow, the quiet, creeping sabotage that slowly unravels everything around him. At first it seems harmless. He forgets to reply to a message. He misses a small deadline. He changes his mind about a plan again. But these aren't isolated incidents. They are the beginning of a pattern, a slow, steady erosion of reliability. He doesn't break things loudly. He lets them dissolve silently. And when confronted, he doesn't argue. Instead, he tells you he needs time, that he's figuring things out, that he doesn't want to force anything. His words are wrapped in softness, but they leave you exhausted, because deep down you sense it, he's not really building anything. He's just avoiding collapse by keeping everything unfinished. He lives in almost committed, almost responsible, almost ready. This shadow doesn't just affect him, it drains the people who love him. Romantic partners feel like they're loving a ghost, someone who shows up just enough to keep the hope alive, but never fully arrives. They are left in limbo, holding space for a man who refuses to step into it. He says he loves but vanishes. He says he wants a future but never lays a single brick to build it. Family members grow tired. Friends pull back. There's only so much advice, so much patience, so much belief one can give before it starts to feel like enabling. And yet he rarely sees the damage, because in his mind he is still the victim, the misunderstood genius, the one who doesn't fit into a rigid world, the soul too bright for structure. He blames systems, society, partners, parents, but never himself. This is the true tragedy of the puer aeternus. He believes his resistance is freedom, but it's fear. He believes his indecision is depth, but it's avoidance. And he doesn't just sabotage his own life, he slowly, invisibly erodes the lives of those who try to love him. Carl Jung once wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." This is the moment where the puer aeternus must confront what he has spent a lifetime running from his own shadow. Because the problem is not that he carries a child within. We all do. The problem is when that child becomes the ruler, when the boy refuses to surrender the throne to the man. When play replaces purpose, when spontaneity becomes sabotage, when dreaming becomes a permanent detour from becoming. To heal the puer must first see, and that is no easy task. The shadow is not evil, it is unconscious. It is the accumulation of everything he has disowned: fear of failure, fear of mediocrity, fear of being fully known. It is the pain of not being enough, the shame of never delivering on his own potential. And it festers silently beneath the surface of his charisma. He doesn't wake up one morning and say, "I will sabotage my life today." No, it happens slowly through the gentle erosion of self-trust, through endless deflection, through the stories he tells himself to avoid responsibility. And here's what makes it even harder. He believes those stories. He believes he's misunderstood. He believes people ask too much. He believes that growing up means selling out. And so he rejects maturity, not out of rebellion, but out of confusion, mistaking seriousness for soullessness, mistaking structure for spiritual death. But the truth is the world is not trying to crush him. It is inviting him to rise. To see the shadow is not to collapse, it is to awaken. It is to finally say, "I see the boy in me, and I choose to lead him, not be led by him." Because that is where healing begins, not in more potential, but in presence. Not in rehearsing life, but in stepping into it. And not in abandoning the child within, but in giving him what he truly needs: boundaries, direction, and the strength of a grounded soul. The eternal boy is rarely alone. Behind almost every man who refuses to grow up there is a silent presence, a figure sometimes loving, sometimes suffocating, who keeps him tethered to childhood long after his body has matured. In Jungian psychology, she is known as the archetypal mother. This mother is not always literal. Sometimes she is a biological mother who never allowed her son to fail, who picked up the pieces before they could fall, who gave so much love that it became a boundaryless cage. But often she is symbolic a partner who unconsciously adopts the role of caretaker, a grandmother who coddles a woman who loves with such intensity that she shields the man from life itself. And the puer aeternus, despite his claims of independence, remains deeply entangled in her emotional embrace. He seeks from women not a partner, but a maternal refuge. Someone who will nurture without demanding, accept without questioning, support without limits. It is not intimacy he craves, but safety, not connection, but comfort. And when the relationship begins to require accountability, depth, or confrontation, he pulls away not because he doesn't care, but because he never entered the relationship as an adult. He entered as a child searching for his mother in a lover's body. This unconscious dynamic is devastating for both. The symbolic mother believes she is helping. She thinks her compassion is healing him. But in reality, she is keeping him small. And she pays a heavy price: emotional exhaustion, resentment, and eventually heartbreak. Jung warned of this pattern with clarity. The greatest tragedy is when the mother refuses to let the child be born psychologically. When she does not release him, he cannot be born into himself. He remains suspended, dependent, unformed, unfinished. To break this cycle is painful. It requires separation. It requires death not of love, but of illusion. Because only when the umbilical cord is cut can the man rise from the boy and finally begin the journey of individuation. Growth, when it finally comes, does not arrive like sunlight. It arrives like thunder. The man who has lived under the spell of the puer aeternus reaches a breaking point, not because he chooses to, but because life no longer allows him to hide. The dreams he's carried begin to weigh like anchors. The relationships he's lost leave behind a bitter silence. And the illusion of endless time begins to crack. He looks around and realizes something terrifying: the world has kept moving, but he has not. This is the moment of rupture. The moment where the boy must die, not in cruelty, but in necessity. The moment when the man within must choose to be born. And like all births, it is painful. The fantasies must be buried. The imagined life must be mourned. The mother, whether literal or symbolic, must be released. Jung called this process individuation, the birth of the true self. And it is not a gentle path. It is raw. It is disorienting. It strips away everything that once gave comfort, the excuses, the dependencies, the dreams that never risked becoming real. The boy says, "Don't grow up, it's dangerous." But the man replies, "Not growing up is death." To cut the cord means facing the grief of what never was the projects unfinished, the relationships sabotaged, the years spent waiting. It means letting go of the myth that someone else will come and save him. No partner, no parent, no perfect moment, only him. This is the pain that purifies, the crucible through which a man is forged, not through perfection, but through responsibility, through showing up, through staying when it's hard, through building when it's boring, through loving when the ideal has faded. Maturity isn't the end of freedom, it's the beginning of power. And that power only arrives when the man stops asking to be carried and chooses finally to walk. Maturity is often misunderstood. It's not the death of creativity nor the end of joy. It's not about abandoning your dreams or becoming dull, serious, and stiff. True maturity is something far more powerful. It's the art of integration. It's when the boy within is not banished but reined in. When he no longer runs the show but is guided by the man who has chosen to rise. The spontaneous spark is still there, the wildness, the wonder, but now it is channeled through structure, through focus, through steady hands. The mature man doesn't stop dreaming. He builds. He wakes up when he doesn't feel like it. He works even when inspiration doesn't come. He honors his commitments not because they're always easy, but because he understands the sacredness of showing up. He stays present in love even when the butterflies fade. He says no when escape seems easier. He remains when the ideal shatters because he's no longer chasing perfection, he's embodying purpose. This is what the puer aeternus could never grasp, that freedom isn't found in avoiding structure, it's found in choosing what's worth building. That power isn't in being unbound, it's in being rooted, intentional, and real. And here's the secret: when the eternal boy is integrated, not destroyed, not denied, he becomes a force of light. His imagination, once chaotic, becomes visionary. His sensitivity, once unstable, becomes empathy. His restlessness, once exhausting, becomes a drive to create something lasting. He doesn't disappear. He transforms. He no longer escapes the world. He shapes it. And that is true rebirth, not a return to innocence, but a return to responsibility. Not the thrill of the new, but the quiet beauty of becoming whole. Because growing up isn't the end of magic, it's the moment when magic meets muscle, when vision meets action, and when the soul finally comes home to itself. At some point, the disguise begins to crumble. The stories you told yourself no longer comfort you. The dreams you postponed begin to feel like ghosts. And the freedom you clung to starts tasting like loneliness. This is the threshold, the moment between remaining in illusion or crossing into truth. You feel it in your chest, in your silence, in the aching awareness that you've been rehearsing a life you never started living. Carl Jung warned, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And that's the truth for the puer aeternus. As long as he refuses to confront himself, he will live in circles chasing meaning, blaming others, growing older, but never growing up. But here's the hope: this doesn't have to be the end of the story. You can still choose. Not when everything feels perfect. Not when you feel ready, but now when it hurts. When the illusion is collapsing. When something inside you whispers, enough. That's when the real journey begins. You don't have to abandon the boy in you. You only have to stop letting him drive. You don't have to throw away your dreams. You just have to start building them. Slowly, honestly, brick by brick, day by day. Because life doesn't wait, and neither does your soul. This is your choice. Remain the man who almost became, or become the man who finally did. Stay in the comfort of what you know, or dare to step into the unknown, where wholeness, purpose, and love are no longer fantasies, but lived realities. Freedom is not found in escape. It's found in choosing your path and walking it with courage. The time is now. Not someday, now. There comes a time when we must stop romanticizing potential and start honoring responsibility. The story of the puer aeternus isn't just about one man's immaturity, It's a reflection of a deeper truth. We all face the temptation to stay safe, uncommitted, and endlessly preparing instead of becoming. But life rewards action, not intention. It honors those who are willing to fail to show up to build even when it's uncomfortable. If you recognize yourself in this story, it's not a reason for shame. It's a call to stop hiding behind dreams and start building them into reality, to shift from floating to grounding, to redefine freedom not as escape, but as the power to choose what truly matters and stay with it. Growth hurts, responsibility challenges, but only through that struggle do we find something deeper than comfort. We find meaning. And in the end, meaning is what makes a life worth living.